Hi, my name is Luna, and for most of my life, I've been the quiet one, the steady one, the one who followed the rules, got good grades, stayed late at work, and didn't cause drama at Thanksgiving. But what if I told you that even someone like me, someone who avoids conflict like the plague, can only stay silent for so long? I grew up in Bozeman, Montana. If you've never been, it's the kind of town where everyone knows each other, and gossip spreads faster than wildfire. My parents, Bill and Marlene Carter, are good people. Dad's a retired electrical engineer who still thinks rotary phones are superior. And Mom was a high school English teacher who quotes Shakespeare in casual conversation. They worked hard to raise us, right? Me and my older sister. Savannah. Savannah was always the sparkler in the family. You know the type walked into a room like she owned it. Always had a story to tell. Always knew the latest trends before they hit Instagram. Where I saw structure and stability, Savannah saw opportunity and spotlight. And from a very young age, she learned how to command attention, usually at my expense. She's 2 years older than me, but it always felt like 20. When I won the 4th grade spelling bee, she told everyone she taught me how to study. When I landed my first internship at a local vet clinic, she told our relatives. She helped me write the application despite never seeing it. And when I finally graduated from Montana State with honors in marketing, she made it sound like I was just following the path she paved. Even though she dropped out of community college after 1 semester, at first, I thought maybe I was being too sensitive. That's what Dad always said. Just let it roll off your back. Lou. That's how she is. And Mom, she meant well. Savannah's just more expressive. Sweetheart. Don't take it personally. But when you hear that kind of thing your whole life, you start to believe maybe the problem is you. Maybe it's easier to shrink than to fight. So I did what I always do. I focused. I put my head down, saved every dime from every odd job, and poured my energy into building something real. While Savannah was bouncing from job to job in Austin, chasing influencer dreams and leasing brand new cars she could barely afford, I was living in a modest apartment, building my own company from scratch. My business, a line of natural, ethically sourced pet care products. It started as a side hustle, me mixing oatmeal paw balm in my kitchen and selling it at local farmers markets. But after 2 years of long nights and ramen dinners, things clicked. By year 3, we were shipping nationwide. By year 5, we were featured in a national lifestyle magazine. I finally had my own team, my own warehouse, and the kind of financial freedom I never bragged about but deeply valued. But here's the thing, Savannah never understood. I wasn't building all this to show her up. I just wanted a life that was real, stable, mine, still. No matter how far I got, Savannah always found a way to insert herself into the narrative. At family events, she would tell people how she always believed in me, how she coached me through the hard decisions, and encouraged me to be bold. Never mind that I hadn't shared a real personal detail with her in years. She didn't need facts, just an audience. And the truth is, I let her do it. Every time. I bit my tongue because it wasn't worth the fight. Because deep down, I didn't want to be like her, loud, self-serving, constantly performing. But something shifted 3 years ago. Our family rented a lakeside cabin at Flathead Lake for the summer. It was one of those postcard perfect places, clear water, pine trees for miles, and the kind of sunsets that make you rethink everything. Savannah became obsessed with a house she saw while paddleboarding. A sprawling cedar cabin with a private dock and panoramic windows. She called it her future lake house and spent the rest of the trip photographing every inch of it and declaring how she would host 4th of July parties there. Of course! The listing price was well out of her reach, $1, $3 million. But that didn't stop her from dreaming or telling everyone that one day, when her brand took off, she'd buy it. Fast forward to 6 months ago, and while my business was going through a minor financial hiccup, supplier issues, shipping delays, the usual growing pains, Savannah came over for a weekend visit. I caught her looking through papers on my desk while I was in the kitchen. She played it off like she was looking for a pen. That should have been the warning sign. Because what happened next changed everything. Everything unraveled 2 weeks before our annual end-of-summer family reunion. I was in the middle of negotiating a new supplier contract and restructuring shipping logistics after one of my longtime partners shut down without warning. It wasn't catastrophic, just stressful. I hadn't told my family because, well, why would I? These kinds of hiccups come with running a business. I'd been through worse, but I was managing it. And then, Savannah struck. The reunion that year was being held at our cousin Theo's property, a big ranch house near Glacier National Park, with enough space to host 30 relatives, a grill the size of a small car. And, of course, an open mic night that Savannah insisted on planning scrated, lighter in tile and calm. Everyone was flying in, cousins from Seattle, uncles from Nashville. Even our grandparents made the trip from Phoenix. It was the kind of weekend where everyone wore matching shirts on day one and pretended family tension didn't exist. Except it very much did. I showed up Saturday morning with a tray of homemade dog treats for the family pets and a bottle of wine for the adults. As I walked up the gravel path to the house, I could already hear Savannah laughing from the patio. Her voice sharp and sugar-coated. "Luna," she called when she spotted me. "Come say hi to everyone. We were just talking about you." Immediately. My stomach dropped. She was wearing a flowy boho dress, designer sunglasses pushed up on her head, and that same practice smile she always used when she was up to something. I hugged a few relatives, handed off the wine to my aunt, and made my way to the kitchen hoping for a moment of silence and maybe a Diet Coke. But the peace didn't last long. Around noon, when everyone had gathered for the backyard barbecue, Savannah stood up at the long picnic table and clinked a fork against her champagne glass. "Hey everyone," she said sweetly, flashing that pageant smile. "Before we dig into these ribs, I just wanted to take a second to say something important." I paused mid-sip. Something was coming. I could feel it in my bones. "As most of you know," she continued, placing a performative hand on her heart, "family is everything to me. And when someone in the family is hurting, I think it's our job to lift them up even when they're too proud to ask for help." A few relatives leaned forward. Curious. Savannah turned her eyes toward me, soft and brimming with fake compassion. "I know Luna's been quiet lately, reserved, and that's because she's going through something really tough right now." Oh no. She didn't want me to say this. But I think it's time we all knew the truth. Luna's business, it's gone under. She filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy last month. The air was sucked out of the backyard. I froze. She's lost her inventory, her accounts, even her warehouse. Savannah said solemnly, as though announcing a death. I only found out because I happened to see the paperwork at her place. And my heart broke. I just want her to know she's not alone. I could hear forks dropping, gasps, murmurs. My mother's hand shot to her mouth. My dad looked stunned. Cousin Jake was already whispering something to his girlfriend. I sat there, utterly blindsided, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. Savannah wasn't finished. I told her she can move in with me in Austin while she gets back on her feet. She said, smiling like some benevolent queen. I've even spoken to a few people about job opportunities for her. I know this is hard for Luna. But sometimes pride gets in the way of healing. That's when I knew this wasn't concern. This was humiliation. A carefully staged performance designed to make her look generous and strong, and me small and pitiful. I stood up slowly. That's not true, I said. Voice steady but quiet. I'm not bankrupt. Savannah's smile wavered. Just slightly. It's okay. Luna, you don't have to pretend anymore. I'm not pretending. You saw preliminary documents. They were contingency papers, part of a legal restructuring. Nothing was ever filed. My dad looked at me. Confused. So you didn't file anything, no? I said, meeting his eyes. We're recovering. I'm working with a new supplier. Sales are rebounding. There was never a bankruptcy. But the damage was done. I could feel the doubt in the air. Savannah had been specific. Chapter 11. Warehouse closure. She used insider terms to sound legitimate. I had offered facts. But not a show. And in families like ours, theatrics often won over truth. I excused myself and slipped into the house, locking myself in the bathroom. My hands were shaking. I checked my phone. A new email had arrived. Subject: congratulations on your offer acceptance, Flathead Lake property. I stared at the screen. The same lake house Savannah had obsessed over for years, the one she'd taken pictures of, dreamed about hosting bridal showers in, and gushed over on Instagram it had come back on the market recently. She didn't know it yet. But I'd placed a cash offer 2 days ago, and it had just been accepted. I took a deep breath. She humiliated me publicly. But what she didn't know, what no one knew, was that the keys to her dream were about to land in my hands. And no, it wasn't about revenge. It was about boundaries. And it was time I finally drew the line. The next morning, I was up before the sun. I hadn't slept much. My body was still buzzing from the emotional whiplash of yesterday's ambush, but there was something else keeping me awake too, something deeper. A strange, electric calm. Like I was finally stepping out of a story I didn't write and taking the pen into my own hands. I got dressed in jeans and a clean button-down, slipped on my boots, and drove 2 hours north, with a manila folder sitting on the passenger seat beside me. Inside it, the purchase agreement for a 4-bedroom cedar and glass lake house with a private dock and unobstructed mountain views. The same house Savannah had called her future on at least 6 occasions in the last 3 years. The one she photographed like a paparazzo during our last vacation? The one she said she'd buy once the right brand deal came through? Well, the right deal came through. Just not for her. At exactly 9:00 a.m., I pulled into the parking lot of Glacier Title and Escrow. The receptionist greeted me with a polite smile and handed me a pen. I sat down in the small conference room, flipped through the thick packet of closing documents, and started signing Lost. It didn't feel like revenge. It felt like resolution. When the final signature was down, the notary slid a thin envelope toward me. Congratulations, she said. You're officially a homeowner. Welcome to Flathead Lake. I walked out with the keys in my hand and a plan in my head. By 10:15, I was pulling into the circular gravel driveway of the house I now owned. The sun was just high enough to light up the massive lake-facing windows, and the breeze carried the scent of pine, water, and something that felt like peace. I unlocked the front door and stepped inside. The house was even more beautiful than I remembered. Vaulted ceilings, exposed beams, a stone fireplace, tall enough to climb, The kitchen still had the farmhouse sink and the custom cabinets Savannah had once gushed about. Upstairs, the master bedroom overlooked the lake with sliding doors that led to a private balcony. There was a sunroom, a library nook, and a deck perfect for family gatherings if one day I felt like hosting one. But today wasn't about celebration. Today was about clarity. I texted Savannah. Me change of plans. Meet me at 1:45. 3320 Lakeshore Drive Ive. Savannah, what is that me? Just put it in your GPS. I knew she'd come. Curiosity would eat her alive. I made coffee. Set 2 mugs out on the porch table. And waited. At 1:52. A red BMW convertible crunched up the gravel. Savannah stepped out in a white linen jumpsuit and oversized sunglasses, scanning the property like she'd stumbled into the wrong movie set. She climbed the porch steps slowly. Okay, what is going on? She asked. Brow furrowed. I gestured to the swing beside me. Have a seat. Coffee? She stayed standing, eyes darting from the wraparound porch to the lake view. Then back to me. Wait, this place, this is the lake house. This is my lake house. I raised my mug to my lips. Well? It's someone's Perry Tad. Are you house sitting for a friend? She asked. Voice climbing. I set my mug down. No? Savannah. I'm the owner. I bought it yesterday morning. She stared at me like I'd just spoken Latin. That's not possible. She caught herself too late, but I finished her sentence for her anyway. Bankrupt, isn't that what you said yesterday? The color drained from her face. I saw the documents, they were contingency files. I said sharply. Nothing was ever filed. You never asked? You just assumed. Twisted the narrative. And made a public announcement like you were delivering a eulogy. She flinched. I took a deep breath. I invited you here today because something needs to change. I've let this dynamic go on for too long. You hijack my accomplishments, undermine my choices, and turn my privacy into performance. And I let you because I didn't want to fight. Because I thought staying quiet was the mature thing to do. Her eyes filled with something I couldn't name: shame. Maybe fear. I didn't mean to hurt you, she said quietly. Yes. You did? I replied. Not unkindly. And you succeeded. But what you don't know is, you also gave me the final push I needed to set a boundary. She looked around again, almost dazed. I can't believe you bought it. After everything I said about it, that's exactly why I bought it. I said simply, not to hurt you, but to reclaim something. We sat in silence for a long moment. She finally lowered herself onto the swing, her sunglasses slipping down her nose. So what now? She asked. You gonna tell the family I lied, make a big announcement, and humiliate me the way I did to you? I shook my head. No, I'm not interested in revenge. I'm interested in truth. And if you're willing to be honest with me and with them, maybe we can start over. She looked out at the water. The sunlight hit the surface in glimmers. When she finally spoke, her voice was small. I don't know who I am without pretending. I softened. Well, I said, maybe this is the perfect place to figure that out. Savannah didn't say anything right away. She just sat there, eyes fixed on the lake like she was watching her reflection ripple and vanish in the water. And for once, she wasn't posing, performing, or adjusting her tone for effect. She was just quiet. I almost didn't recognize her like that. I'm tired. Luna, she finally said. Tired of pretending. Of trying to look like I have it together when everything's been falling apart? I stayed silent, letting her fill the space. My lease in Austin is a month behind. My credit cards are maxed out. That designer dress I wore yesterday, she laughed bitterly. Rented. I don't own anything. Not even my image. I looked at her not with pity, but with clarity. For so long, she'd lived inside this costume of success. But now, the zipper was undone. And what was underneath looked fragile and very real. Why didn't you tell me? I asked softly. She shrugged, wiping at her cheek as a tear smudged her mascara. Because I'm the big sister, I'm supposed to have it all figured out. You were always the one who worked quietly in the background, and I was the one people looked to for sparkle. For fun. If I admitted I was drowning, what would be left of me? I leaned back, my hand resting on the porch railing. I think you'd be surprised how many people would show up for the real you, not the curated version. She looked at me with damp, questioning eyes. Even you, I nodded. Especially me, but not if you keep tearing me down just to build yourself up. She flinched, but didn't argue. I took a breath. So here's the truth. Savannah, you hurt me. What you did at the reunion wasn't just invasive, it was cruel. You used my temporary silence as an opportunity to rewrite my story and cast yourself as the hero. And worse, you didn't even think to ask me if any of it was true. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. I continued. Steady but firm, but I'm done letting that define our relationship. I'm drawing a line, not because I want to punish you, but because I finally understand something. Boundaries aren't betrayal. They're protection. For me. And maybe even for you. Savannah swallowed hard, then nodded. I deserve that. She said. I do. I studied her face, watching the cracks in her mask widen, letting the light in. It was strange, almost surreal to see the sister I used to look up to finally look back at me not as competition, but as kin. I'm not saying we can magically fix everything. I added, but I want something different. For us, I want a relationship that's based on honesty, not illusion. She shifted on the swing. What would that even look like? It starts with you telling the truth. I said, to the family. You don't have to grovel or make some big spectacle. Just own what happened. Tell them the truth about what you saw and what you assumed. And stop trying to turn me into your redemption arc. She exhaled sharply. They're gonna think I'm a monster. No. I said gently. They'll think you made a mistake. And if you're honest about it, they'll respect that more than the perfect performance you've been trying to uphold. She stared out at the dock again, then slowly nodded. Okay. I'll do it. We sat in silence for a while. The breeze picked up. The sun dipped lower in the sky, casting golden threads across the surface of the lake. After a moment, she said, So, you really bought this place? I did. I said, and you're not gonna keep it just to spite me? I smiled. No. But I'm also not handing you the keys out of guilt. I'm offering something different. Her brow lifted. Like what? An opportunity? I said, to reset. This house is big enough for both of us, but if you want to use it, stay here. Visit. Whatever it comes with conditions. Her eyes narrowed cautiously. What kind of conditions? I counted them off on my fingers. 1. No more public humiliation. 2. No more rewriting history or taking credit for things that aren't yours. 3. If something's going wrong in your life, say it. Don't weaponize my silence to distract from your mess. She blinked, stunned by the directness. Then, surprisingly, she smiled. Honestly, that's fair. I nodded. And if you're open to it, I can help you get your finances under control. I'm not judging. I just want you to know there's a way forward. She looked at me, eyes wide. You'd really do that after everything? I shrugged. Helping you isn't the problem. It's being used by you that I'm done with. We both laughed a soft, cautious kind of laughter. Like we were testing a new language. And maybe we were. She looked down at the mug in her hands and said quietly, You know, you could have used this house to destroy me. Rub it in my face. Post it online. Invite the whole family just to watch me squirm. I met her eyes. I didn't want to win. Savannah. I wanted to end the war. Her face softened. You know, she said. There was this one summer. When I was 12 and you were 10, I told everyone you still slept with a nightlight. I groaned. Don't remind me. She laughed. And you got me back by putting ketchup in my shampoo bottle. Classic. I said, smiling. Even back then, we were more alike than we knew. Maybe it's time we started acting like sisters. She whispered. I nodded. Yeah, maybe it is. 2 weeks later, our family gathered again. But this time, it wasn't at a cousin's ranch or my parents' backyard. It was at the lake house. The invitations had been sent from both of us. Luna and Savannah Carter request the pleasure of your company for an afternoon at Flathead Lake. No explanation. No drama. Just a chance to gather again, but on our terms this time. The living room was filled with curious faces as relatives trickled in. My mom stood by the panoramic windows, admiring the view. It's stunning. Luna, she said quietly, gently touching the edge of a cedar windowsill. But I don't understand. When did you buy this? I smiled, setting out a tray of fresh lemonade. The morning after the reunion. Her eyes widened. That soon? I'd been planning it for a while. I said, just waiting for the right time. My dad wandered over to the bookshelves and ran his fingers along the custom cabinetry. Not exactly what I expected from someone supposedly bankrupt. He said with a slight smirk. Yeah, about that. I began. But before I could continue, Savannah walked in. And for once she wasn't trying to steal the show. She was wearing a simple chambray dress. No flashy sunglasses. No bold lipstick. She looked like herself. Or maybe who she used to be before all the pretending. She carried a tray of her own homemade caprese skewers. Surprisingly presentable, and set it next to the lemonade. Then she cleared her throat. I have something I want to say. She told the room. Chatter faded. Chairs turned. Our family, known for its love of gossip, was suddenly silent. Savannah looked around and took a breath. At the reunion, I stood up and told you all that Luna had filed for bankruptcy. I said her business had collapsed. That she was moving in with me. None of that was true. You could feel the air change. I found some legal paperwork at her house and jumped to the worst conclusion. She continued. And instead of talking to her about it, I turned it into a public announcement. I was angry. I was insecure. And I wanted to feel in control. But all I did was hurt someone who didn't deserve it. Murmurs swept across the room. My mother's hand went to her chest. My cousin Jake muttered, Wow. Under his breath. Savannah turned toward me. Luna didn't deserve what I did to her. And she certainly didn't deserve to be humiliated in front of people she loves. She's built something amazing. Something real. And instead of celebrating her, I tried to tear it down. She looked back to the crowd. Voice steadier now. I'm not proud of who I've been. But I'm trying to change that. The silence that followed was heavy but not cold. Just real. Then my Uncle Tom, never one for sentiment, nodded and said, "Takes guts to admit when you screw up. Good on you." My mom walked up and pulled both of us into a hug, her eyes glassy. "I'm just glad you girls are talking," she whispered. That afternoon felt different from any other family gathering I'd ever attended. The usual undercurrents of comparison and competition were replaced with something lighter. Cousins played cornhole in the backyard. Aunt Marcia took 100 photos of the lake. Dad grilled burgers with Theo and told everyone he helped me install the deck lighting, even though we both knew he hadn't lifted a finger. Savannah and I floated in and out of conversations. But we found our way back to each other on the dock just before sunset, barefoot, legs dangling over the water, watching the golden sky reflect on the ripples below. "You know," she said quietly, "you didn't have to forgive me. Especially not like this." I smiled. Forgiving you wasn't the hard part. Learning how to draw the line, that's what took time. She nodded slowly. I think I'm starting to understand what boundaries actually mean. Not just between us. With money. With the version of myself I thought I had to be. We sat in silence for a while. Then, she added, "I started working on a new resume. For real this time. And I've actually stuck to the budget template you sent me." "Yeah," I nudged her playfully. "No more designer sunglasses on layaway," she laughed. "Nope. I even made my own cold brew at home this week." Now that's growth. We both laughed. And for the first time in years, it wasn't tense. It wasn't forced. It was just us. Later that evening, as the fire pit glowed and marshmallows sizzled on sticks, I stood back and looked at the scene. My family, scattered across the deck, talking, laughing, eating, genuinely enjoying each other. It hit me all at once. This house wasn't just a purchase. It was a turning point. And not just for me, but for both of us. What was meant to break me became the catalyst for something stronger: honesty, boundaries, healing, and maybe even real sisterhood. What's the lesson here? Sometimes the hardest people to draw lines with are the ones who share your last name. And sometimes, the wounds they leave don't bleed, they bruise. Quietly. Slowly. Over years. But you don't have to keep shrinking to keep the peace. You don't have to stay silent to stay the bigger person. And you don't have to fight with fire to win. Sometimes, you just buy the house. And let the truth open the door.